presents Lost Reality, Part 2. What would an ocean be without a monster lurking in the dark? It would be like sleep without dreams. Vanna Herzog. What the hell, you kept playing? Where are the rest? Ted ran, catching up with Maria as they ran up the stairs of the mansion. You boys have tiny bladders, what can I say? I poked around some rooms then. After 5 minutes, that thing came through the wall. I ran, and your freakish paws self just shrunk and followed, floating along. Then you came too. Ted and Maria stopped, hiding around a corner and shrouded in dark. So where are the others? As Ted spoke, the paused Harris avatar floated up, hovering in the darkness and standing less than a foot tall. Okay, that's both creepy and cool. As Ted spoke, the Harris avatar began to grow in size as it solidified. Ted and Maria were about to urge silence when Harris shrieked in a blood-curdling scream. Panic and agony blazed across his face as virtual blood began to trickle down his mouth. My mom, I can't believe she... With that, the Harris avatar blinked out of existence. Ted and Maria looked at one another, lost for words to explain what had just happened. Maria was the first to speak. Pause. Guy in yellow. What just happened? Where is everyone? Maria asked to the heavens, awaiting some reply. The bodiless voice of the receptionist responded in a calming tone. Player connections have been interrupted. Players will be able to rejoin if they are able. Ted looked nervously at Maria. I think I should call Harris. That was just weird. Maria nodded in agreement. I'll text John and Ernst, see what's holding them up. Ted nodded and exited the game. As his vision improved, Ted reached for his phone. Ted's hand fell upon a bristly surface, and instinctively, Ted recoiled in fear. Ted's face ran white as snow as he sat there, making himself as diminutive as possible, retreating as far as the couch would allow. Anything, just to achieve distance from the grouping of spiders that sat innocently upon and around his phone, impossibly large or so many in number as to give the appearance of great size. The mass slowly inched forward, motivating Ted to violently crash through his living room, out his door, and down the hall. Ted wouldn't be ashamed that he wet himself a little, given the phobia-inducing terror he had just beheld. Ted ran furiously down the flight of stairs to the super's apartment. As Ted was about to pound on the door, Ted noticed a sticky orange substance running up the length of the door toward its handle. Ted further noticed the door was slightly ajar, but no light came from within. Ted gently pushed open the door, calling out to the middle-aged man in a hushed tone. As Ted journeyed further within the apartment, he raised his voice slightly, hoping to not catch the man off guard. From the kitchen, Ted heard a slopping sound, as if a wet bag was heaved upon the table. Making his way in the dark to the room, Ted couldn't help but notice the knife rack on the counter, his fight or flight reflex screaming to be heard. Ted discovered the source of the sound and instantly reached for the knife to his left. The superintendent, a jovial man in his late 50s, someone that typically wore a warm, welcoming smile, now resembled death itself. Transforming between man and creature, what stood before Ted trembling was unrecognizable. Hideous beyond words, the creature lunged at Ted, screeching as it did. Ted made a weak hacking motion with the cleaver, severing one of the beast's appendages. Enraged, the creature howled as it reared back, preparing to attack once more. Ted seized his moment of pure adrenaline and slammed into the creature, knocking it off balance. Hacking again and again at the monstrosity, Ted flung gore to all ends of the kitchen, saturating the room with this monstrosity's green fluids. Only when some splashed across Ted's visor did he snap back and regain his composure. Ted pivoted to his side as another loud screech came from the doorway. Another creature ran towards Ted, arms outstretched, intending to tackle Ted, but the creature had misjudged its lunge. Ted easily maneuvered out of the way, bringing down the cleaver on the creature's neck, nearly severing its head from body. Ted had little intention of waiting for a third creature to attack. Now thinking only of escape, he knew he would have to return to his room. Keys for his car hung just within the entryway, meaning no matter the horror that awaited him, he would still be within inches of his keys and the impending safety they represented. As Ted cautiously peered into the hall, Another strange sound caused terror to creep up his spine. At the end of the hall stood a smaller creature than the one that had attacked Ted, but no less terrifying. Ted did his best to ignore the creature's wail as he raced up the stairs back to his room. Ted attempted to reach his arm through the tiniest crack in the door to find his keys without actually having entered his apartment, but failed miserably. An icy cold appendage gripped Ted's arm with impossible strength, pulling him into the apartment and slamming him into the adjacent wall. Ted was nearly overcome with terror as the receptionist, now dressed more formally yet still in that sickly yellow color, stepped from the shadows. His face misshaped, the being hunched over Ted, grinning in its deformed way. Ted trembled in fear, tears streaming down his face. All he could manage was a whimper. "What do you want?" The creature laughed with a bone-chilling cackle that caused Ted to nearly vomit in fear. Ted, I offered you a truly terrifying experience, and you accepted. I take it the experience measured up to your expectations?" Ted sat there, confused, terrified, drained. Was any of it real? As Ted spoke, sounds could be heard from the hall, wails and cries of unimaginable horror, inching closer to Ted's apartment. "Oh, this was all very, very real. In fact, you have but moments to live. You hear them, don't you?" Ted inched to his feet, cleaver outstretched, keeping the strange being at arm's length. "What are you?" Ted cried out in rage. "Something far older and more powerful than you could ever imagine. You may call me the Yellow King, if you like." As the creature spoke, he grew in stature, eyes flame red. Ted lunged at the creature, slashing the cleaver wildly, when suddenly he heard loud cracks and felt the air in his lungs punched from his body. Ted looked down in shock as blood streamed from tiny holes throughout his torso. As Ted crumbled to the floor, his VR goggles slid off, revealing the pair of officers standing in his doorway. Ted died in agony, shrouded in confusion, and with the sickening sound of the Yellow King's laughter ringing in his ear. News agencies across the state reported on the mysterious slayings, believed to be part of some ritualistic cult devoted to or influenced by video game violence. The five friends reportedly went on homicidal rampages in their respective homes and communities, murdering children, family members, strangers, all indiscriminately. The madness that gripped them would remain a mystery, but the bloody swath of death and mutilation they left behind would leave a lasting scar for decades to come. The brief infamy the virtual reality headsets earned for their association with the murders was short-lived and only served to pique interest and spur on sales. Authorities could find no connection and only could surmise whatever games the group had played were unconnected to the murders that followed. That Christmas, a new version of the VR system went on sale. Perfect for any child, ages 10 and up, the system contained educational as well as entertainment games and so much more. Every child wanted one, resulting in record sales and profits for the company, as every child was nothing short of amazed. For a time. To be concluded in Part 3. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this Asylum Inc. presentation.